Prologue. Landfall, Queen Taifa stands on her warship Targon, watching the brutal battle on the beach as her people fight for survival after fleeing the Cull. Champion Siori urges retreat to the ships, but Taifa refuses, vowing never to return to the sea. She mourns the death of her nursemaid Sonura, who perished without knowing they had found land. Scouts report a dragon nest in the central mountains, where a young dragon has been born, presenting an opportunity to form a coterie. Despite Siori's warnings that using dragons will devastate the land and risk revealing them to the Cull, Taifa insists it's the only way to protect their people. She swears they will use the dragons only briefly, just long enough to secure their new home. Though disappointed and conflicted, Siori pledges his support, preparing to hold the beach and buy time for Taifa's plan to succeed. Champion Siori. Siori leads the Chosen's forces as they fight to secure land after fleeing the Cull, but the campaign turns desperate. All remaining Chosen have disembarked, their ships scavenged, leaving no escape. Siori's army holds the beach and pushes inland to buy Queen Taifa time, but exhaustion and doubt plague his officers. While debating strategy in their command tent, a surprise attack shatters their plans. Using gifts to hide in plain sight, Zidane warriors infiltrate past the front lines, massacring the camp. Colonels Harun and Tahir are killed in the chaos as Siori fights through waves of attackers, ordering a retreat to the ships to protect the civilians. An Inganyama and his young gifted ally sacrifice themselves, buying Siori time to escape. Despite their heroism, the overwhelming enemy force signals inevitable defeat. Siori reaches the reserves, but knows this battle, and likely their survival, will be his final stand. Inganyama. Queen Taifa witnesses her army's defenses collapse as Zidane warriors bypass the front lines, overwhelming the beach. She refuses counsel to surrender, arrests Lady Umi for suggesting retreat, and calls for her gifted to summon dragons. Siori leads a desperate charge with his Inganyama, fighting savages and monstrous six-legged beasts while Taifa coordinates from the ship. Enervators initially succeed but falter under pressure, and the battle turns dire as enemy gifted create illusions, doubling enemy numbers. Taifa splits her mind, channels immense power, and kills the shaman, dispelling the illusions, but the real enemy forces remain overwhelming. Siori orders a retreat, but is gravely wounded, severing his enraging link to save his gifted before being fatally impaled. Taifa screams in anguish as her champion and lover falls, moments before merging her mind with an approaching dragon. The chapter marks a devastating loss and the Chosen's last-ditch attempt to turn the battle's tide. Monster. Queen Taifa fully merges with her dragon, channeling its fury and power to annihilate the Zidane forces attacking her people. With firestorms that turn sand to glass, she burns enemy warriors, forests, and terrain, devastating the peninsula. Her intriguers join with 2 more dragons, amplifying the destruction, but the immense power drains and kills many of her own gifted. Even as her forces declare victory, Taifa continues her slaughter, driven by grief over Siori's death and a vow to honor him with vengeance. The battlefield becomes a charred wasteland, and the surviving enemies scatter in terror. At last, she releases the dragon, returning to her body exhausted but resolute. Facing horrified council members and the corpses of sacrificed allies, Taifa embraces her ruthless role as the Dragon Queen, determined to secure her people's survival at any cost. Alone, she vows to protect Siori's unborn child, accepting that she must be seen as a monster. Part 1. In Chapter 1, Tau trains with petty noble Jabari under his father Aron's supervision near the cliffs above the Roar. Their session is interrupted when a wrecked boat drifts into the Boneyard Rocks, sparking speculation about the Omehi's ocean crossing history. News arrives that Queen Ayana has died, and Princess Tsiora will ascend to the throne, raising concerns about a child queen and the thinning royal line. Tensions rise over rumors that Omehi queens can no longer call dragons. Tau shows compassion by secretly giving food to a starving drudge when receiving their rations. As Aron leaves to discuss increased patrols with Umbusi Onai, Tau heads home, but is stopped when Nkiru, Aron's second-in-command, arrives breathless, shouting that the Hedeni, Xidine, are launching a raid. This sudden alarm signals imminent danger and marks the start of conflict in their fief, cutting short Tau's training and foreshadowing chaos to come. In Chapter 2 duty, Nkiru reports that Hedeni raiders have crossed the cliffs near Daba, confirming a major attack. Aron orders all available fighters from the mountain barracks to defend the hamlet, but Lakin refuses to send keep guards, prioritizing Kerem's defense. Realizing Daba will fall without reinforcements, Aran leaves to confront Lekan while Tau, fearing for his father, decides to act. Tau hides his practice blade, arms himself with his grandfather's bronze sword, and runs to find Jabari, believing he can convince his mother, Umbusi Onai, to help. Sneaking through the keep, Tau encounters his hostile half-sister Jelani but avoids confrontation. He reaches Jabari in the bathhouse, reveals the threat, and pleads for his support. Though Jabari explains his influence is limited, he formulates a plan to protect their people. The chapter highlights Tau's courage, Lekan's cowardice, and the urgency of mobilizing defenses before the raiders overwhelm Daba. In Chapter 3 raid, Tau and Jabari race toward Daba, which is already burning from a Hedeni attack. Jabari's plan forces the keep's guards to follow him for protection, hoping to bring reinforcements. Arriving at the hamlet, they see chaos. Villagers fleeing, homes aflame, and the Yahagu outnumbered and losing ground. Tau kills his first opponent, a female warrior, and is shaken by the experience. They rescue a woman and child, fighting their way through huts and barns to reach the Yahagu's barricade. Inside a hut, Jabari captures another savage who dies through a horrific demon death, shocking them all. After escaping through a barn, they reach the barricade with the rescued villagers and wounded fighters, but the defenders are exhausted and injured. Hundreds more raiders arrive, overwhelming their position. Jabari, Tau, and Tendaji brace for a hopeless final stand, weapons ready, as the Hedeni close in, marking the dire stakes of the battle. In Chapter 4, Guardians, Tau, Jabari, and Tendaji fight desperately at Daba's barricade as waves of Hedeni raiders overwhelm them. A dragon, summoned by the Gifted, arrives, unleashing devastating fire and vaporizing enemies, but Aran warns that it cannot attack once the Hedeni mix with civilians. Aran reprimands Jabari for coming, but praises his cleverness in forcing the keep's guard to send reinforcements. He orders the townspeople to grab what they can and flee, realizing the attack is an extermination rather than a raid. The defenders are driven toward the cliffs, trapped by the raiders' strategy, and the Guardians' firepower is limited to avoid harming their own. Aran commands the Yahagu to form battle lines, to hold off the enemy, giving civilians a chance to escape. Refusing to leave, Tau and Jabari stay to fight alongside Aran. The chapter ends as the Yahagu brace for the Hedeni assault, shouting their battle cry for the goddess. In Chapter 5, warriors, Tau fights amid the chaos at Daba, sustaining cuts and bruises while witnessing brutal losses, including Tendaji's death. Aran rescues him, announcing reinforcements have arrived. The chosen military, elite Ihashe, powerful Ndlovu, and an enraged Inganyama join the battle, turning the tide with devastating force. Tau, Jabari, and the remaining Yahagu retreat toward the Gifted, who are protected by a defensive ring. Tau reflects on his father's history, his own training, and his bond with Zuri, contrasting it with the violence around him. A horn signals a shift as the Hedeni regroup, and Tau identifies their scarred Inkokeli, a tall, commanding figure. Instead of retreating, the raiders focus their attack on the Inganyama. The Gifted prepare to intervene, with Amara attempting a powerful enervation strike despite the risk of harming allies. As her energy surges outward, its edge hits Tau and his world goes dark, ending the chapter in sudden uncertainty. In Chapter 6 Victory, Tau experiences the devastating impact of Amara's enervation, briefly thrusting his soul into the underworld where a demon nearly claims him. The wave incapacitates many Hedeni but misses enough that the Inganyama remains surrounded. Bleeding and overwhelmed, he drops his enraging connection, and the raiders kill him brutally. The Hedeni then capture Gifted Ensia despite her attempt to take her own life. Tau watches helplessly as she is carried to their scarred warlord. A horn signals retreat, and the raiders withdraw, abruptly ending the assault on Daba. Relief sweeps through the chosen ranks, though casualties are heavy. Amidst the aftermath, Tau witnesses another horrifying sight, a Gifted convulsing and dying violently, mirroring the demon death of a captured Hedna earlier. His father stops him from intervening, saying it is Gifted business. Though traumatized and shaken, Aran tells Tau they've secured victory, even as its cost becomes painfully clear. Part 2. In Chapter 1. Plans, Tau struggles with guilt over killing a Hedna woman and dreams of escaping the warrior's path expected of him. His father Aran intensifies Tau's training, determined to prepare him for the Ihashi testing. Later, Tau trains with Jabari, who jokes about their heroics during the raid, but the aftermath weighs heavily, especially as Aren visits the families of fallen soldiers. Alone, Tao reflects on his future, Zuri, and his disdain for the endless war. Comparing himself to his stepfather Makena, who avoided battle through injury, Tao hatches a plan. He will pass his Ihashi test to avoid becoming a drudge, then deliberately get injured to stay home with Zuri. Though shame briefly tempts him to abandon the plan, memories of the raid's horrors harden his resolve to reject a life of killing. As he declares he's done with killing, Zuri appears unexpectedly, having overheard him. In Chapter 2, Courage, Tao trains alone, haunted by guilt over killing a Hedna woman when Zuri approaches him. She praises his skill, comforts him about the killing, and shows concern for his well-being, stepping close and touching his chest. They talk about the recent battle, the dragons, and the captured gifted, but the grimness of war weighs heavily on them. Zuri then confesses she came because she didn't want to live with regrets before Tao leaves for Ihashi training. She kisses him, and the moment overwhelms him, filling him with awe and longing. Though she pulls back, saying they shouldn't go too far, her smile and words make Tao feel as though his life has transformed. As she walks away, promising they still have time before his testing, Tao stands stunned, overwhelmed by what just happened and deeply moved by her affection. This marks a turning point in their relationship. In Chapter 3, Paths, Tao wakes early, his thoughts consumed by Zuri, and joins Jabari to help rebuild Daba. As they walk, Jabari speaks of his responsibility to pass Indlovu training to protect his family's honor and their fief. Tao listens, but is focused on revealing his own plan. He doesn't want to fight in the war and hopes to marry Zuri. He tells Jabari he'll pass his Ihashi testing, then fake or engineer a severe injury to return home and seek a safer life working in the keep. Jabari is shocked but supportive, agreeing to speak highly of Tao if he returns. Their friendship deepens through this conversation, and Jabari teases Tao about Zuri's kiss, both acknowledging how significant it is. This chapter cements Tao's determination to escape the endless war, pursue a future with Zuri, and shows Jabari's loyalty despite disagreeing with Tao's choice. In Chapter 4, Sons, Tao and Jabari return from Daba's rebuilding to find Zuri distressed. She reveals that Nkiru, Aren's second-in-command, attacked Lakan, Jabari's brother, after finding him attempting to assault Nkiru's daughter, Anya. The group rushes to the keep, where a tense standoff has drawn a crowd. Lakan demands Nkiru's execution, but Aren fabricates a story blaming Anya, claiming she tempted a man unknowingly and proposes banishment instead. Jabari supports Aren, helping convince Lakan to avoid bringing the issue to Mbusi Onai. Lakan reluctantly agrees, threatening death if the family is seen again. Aren leads Nkiru, Anya, and their family to pack quickly and flee Kerem for Dakur, where Nkiru's skills as a fighter may find him a place despite dangers. Zuri weeps as she hugs Anya goodbye, and Tao stays close, silently comforting her. The chapter highlights Lakan's cruelty, Aren's diplomacy, and the heavy sacrifices required to protect their community. In Chapter 5, Men, Tao, and Zuri grow closer, finding comfort in each other as they cope with Anya's exile. Tao continues to train daily with Jabari, preparing him for Indlovu testing. The season changes from grow to harvest, and Tao undergoes his manhood ceremony, drinking gaum for the first time and celebrating late into the night. The next morning, Tao wakes to chaos. Aren is enraged after learning Lakan had Nkiru, his wife, children, and baby murdered, their bodies thrown off a cliff. Aren vows revenge, but Ekon convinces him killing Lakan would doom their family. Devastated, Aren decides they will secretly burn Nkiru's family and warns Tao not to tell Jabari. Later, Tao trains furiously with Jabari, venting his anger by pushing him harder in sparring matches. Jabari, unaware of the tragedy, invites Tao to be his Akandis for Queen Siora's upcoming royal procession through Kerem, giving Tao an honor he can't refuse. In Chapter 6, Promises, Tao accompanies Jabari to the keep, which is in chaos preparing for Queen Siora's unexpected visit. While Jabari bathes and gets ready, Tao seeks out Zuri. He finds her working with other handmaidens and formally requests to speak with her, using the excuse of relaying a message from Aren. Once alone, Zuri kisses him and they share a tender moment. Zuri reveals her testing day is set for the new moon the same day as Jabari's and worries about their future as Tao faces 7 cycles of military service. Tao reassures her, suggesting they might find happiness together without him fighting, though he doesn't reveal his full plan. They exchange promises to reunite after training. Before Zuri is called back to work, Tao fails to tell her about Nkiru's family's murder, feeling ashamed and cowardly. He dreads standing near Lekan, the killer, knowing he will do nothing. In Chapter 7, Tao arrives at the Karem Keep, where thousands gather to welcome Queen Siora Omehia. Jabari stands near his parents, Afia Onai and his father, with his brother Lekan nearby, while Tao keeps his distance. Aran and his men line the path, ostensibly to manage the crowd, but also as a show of force. The Queen's Guard, in maroon armor, leads the procession, followed by Queen Siora on horseback with her champion Abshir Okar and Abasi Odili, chairman of the Guardian Council. The Queen's youth and striking beauty impress Tao and Jabari. Afia Onai formally greets the Queen, emphasizing her vassalage. Tao observes Abshir's dragon-scale weapons, noting their alien appearance. He learns about the Qaid's role in the upcoming testing and Abasi's deadly bodies, including Dejan Olujimi and Kellen Okar. Jabari recounts Kellen's father's cowardice at the Battle of Kobena, highlighting the noble's strict code. The chapter ends with Jabari leaving to prepare for dinner, reminding Tao of the upcoming testing. Part 3. In Chapter 1, Queen Siora departs for Kagambi, capturing the attention of Karem's men and women, with Jabari particularly smitten. Tao continues training intensely with Jabari, leaving little time with Zuri, while Aran instructs Tao to withhold the truth about Nkiru's family. Tao struggles with guilt and the desire to tell Zuri. On the morning of Jabari's testing, Tao feels anxious about his friendship with Jabari, his future with Zuri, and Laken's presence alongside them instead of Jabari's father, who remains in Karem due to gout. As they march to the fighting fields between Karem and Mawas, Tao observes Jabari preparing mentally and physically for the testing. Aran advises both to watch the other fighters and emphasizes the importance of experiencing high-stakes combat. Jabari demonstrates confidence, recalling Aran's lessons about opponents' techniques. The men arrive at the sweltering horde fields, ready to begin the midday testing that will determine Jabari's potential advancement and Indlovu induction. In Chapter 2 of Sharp, the fighting fields between Karem and Mawas are prepared meticulously with clay surfaces and 10 marked fighting circles under black Indlovu flags. Many nobles arrive to watch their sons test, including Lekan, Jabari's father, and other influential figures like Thabo Oganekaro. Tao, Aran, and Jabari arrive last. Aran assigns Tao to assist Jabari with armor and warm-ups. Lekan introduces Nkosi Izum Okafor and his son Kagiso, who has no training partner. Aran orders Tao to spar with Kagiso despite Lekan's interference. Tao quickly realizes Kagiso is a poor swordsman, relying on brute swings. During the spar, Tao defends himself, sidesteps, and ultimately throws Kagiso to the ground, causing a bloody nose. Tao panics upon realizing the incident is witnessed by Jabari, Lekan, Izem Okafor, Kagiso, the Guardian Council chairman, and Jayed Aim. Despite the chaos, the Guardian Council chairman begins to clap, signaling approval. In Chapter 3, Tao witnesses Councillor Abasi Odili confronting Kagiso Okafor, a noble, who has been defeated by Tao, a low common. Odili humiliates Kagiso in front of the crowd, declaring that nobles bested by commons are unfit for the citadel. Tensions rise as Lekan lashes out at Jabari, blaming him for Tao's actions, while Tao defends himself and asserts he fought fairly. Odili and Kellen Okar, a young but powerful fighter, assess Tao, questioning his skill. Aran, Tao's father, and a full-blood Ahashi intervenes, insisting he fight in Tao's place. Aran and Kellen clash in a fierce duel, with Kellen's superior youth and speed overpowering Aran. Despite Aran's skill, he is gravely injured, losing a hand and collapsing after multiple strikes. Tao, enraged, grabs his father's sword, but is restrained until Dejan, acting on Odili's command, delivers a fatal blow to Aran, driving his black sword through his chest, ending the fight and spilling his blood onto Tao. In Chapter 4, Tao grapples with the aftermath of his father Aran's death after the blood duel with Kellen Okar. Tao holds his father, speaking to him in a desperate attempt to keep him conscious, but Aran dies from his injuries. Councillor Abasi Odili addresses the crowd, declaring that Aran fought on behalf of his son Tao, who had previously assaulted a noble. Tao faces Odili, but Jayed Aim intervenes, blocking the councillor's killing blow and forcing peace. Odili grants clemency, stating that Tao will be left to his fief while his father has been punished, leaving the southern crowd unsatisfied. Aran's body is taken by his Ihagu for a burning ceremony. Tao receives his father's sword from Jayed, who assures him Aran was brave and that Tao will be cared for. Surrounded by Jabari, Lekin, and the defeated Kagiso, Tao vows vengeance on Odili, Dajin, and Kellen for what they have done. In Chapter 5, Banished, Tao returns home in silence with Jabari after his father Aron's death, while runners are sent to prepare the ritual burning. Tensions rise when Lekin confronts Jabari about the family's precarious position and Tao's role in disrupting the testing. Tao attacks Lekin after the noble insults him, but Jabari intervenes, asserting his authority. He commutes Tao's death sentence for attacking a noble, allowing him to attend his father's burning that night but banishing him from Kerem at sunrise. Jabari warns Tao he may appeal to Mbusi Onai, who will be less lenient. Tao leaves, grief-stricken and angry, struggling to accept his father's death and the betrayal by those he trusted. Zuri finds him and insists on accompanying him to the burning and leaving Kerem together, revealing she is gifted. Tao refuses, realizing both his life and hers are in danger, and sets out alone toward Daba, planning to confront Lekin. In Chapter 6, Lekin Onai, Lekin struggles with anger and frustration after the day's events at the testing and Aron's death. His parents reprimand him, and Jabari's interference undermines his standing. His mother orders him to arrest Tao Tafari at Aron's burning for attacking a noble. During the night, while rain floods his chamber, Tao confronts Lekin, declaring he will join the military, master killing, and one day challenge Lekin to a blood duel, bringing him despair. Lekin attacks Tao with a dagger, aiming to kill him, but Tao resists, using his agility to counter and wound Lekin. They fight violently, rolling across the floor, knocking over a jug of Olu, and struggling for control of the blade. Tao repeatedly strikes Lekin, slamming his head into the wall, breaking his vision and senses. Despite Lekin's strength and attempts to overpower him, Tao gains the upper hand, leaving Lekin dazed, injured, and unable to defend himself, cementing Tao's threat to his life and future. In Chapter 7, Fallen, Tao survives the deadly encounter with Lekin, who is now dead from his own injuries. Tao panics, realizing that the body will be discovered and his family could be blamed. Ocheng, a loyal guard, intervenes, guiding Tao to escape through the open window and covering the blood in Lekin's chambers. Tao descends the wall cautiously, while Ocheng creates a ruse to make it appear Lekin fell down the stairs, diverting suspicion from Tao. Tao pressures himself to move quickly, wraps a cloth around his facial wound to avoid leaving a trail, and retrieves his hidden travel sack and weapons. Despite Lekin's death, Tao feels no satisfaction, overwhelmed by guilt and the magnitude of his actions. He focuses on the next steps: traveling to Kagambi to complete his Ihashi initiation, gain military status, and legally challenge nobles. His thoughts shift to those he must confront next: Kellen Okar, Dejen Olujimi, and Abasi Odili. Part 4. In Chapter 1, Kagambi, Tao travels for 2.5 days from Kerem to Kagambi, following the Usebi path along the ocean. He struggles with nightmares of those he loves dying, including a dream where Zuri's face replaces that of a Hidina warrior he killed. Upon arrival, Tao is overwhelmed by the city's size, copper-colored adobe buildings, concentric walls, and dense population. He observes people from all castes, including many disabled veterans working alongside the living, noting how differently large cities treat their Proven compared to Kerem. An old, one-armed, one-eyed Proven warns Tao about the testing and directs him to the Guardian ceremony, emphasizing the importance of duty and inspiration. Inside Kagambi, Tao navigates the crowded, heat-soaked streets, encounters a sing-song priest promoting the goddess, and finally reaches the ceremony circle. There, he witnesses Queen Siora awarding dragon-scale daggers and swords to top graduates. Tao recognizes Kellen Okar, the man who injured his father, receiving a weapon, heightening his resolve. In Chapter 2, Daggers, Tao pushes through the crowded Kagambi ceremony to get closer to the platform where Queen Siora and her retinue honor top warriors. He watches Kellen Okar receive a guardian dagger standing beside Abasi Odili, and notes the Ndlovu graduates receiving guardian swords. Akaid leads the gifted in prayer and speaks of the peninsula's protection, the Kull, and the threat of the Hideni, rallying the crowd with patriotic and religious fervor. Tao becomes fixated on Kellen and Abasi, intent on revenge for past wrongs and his father's injury. City guards notice Tao carrying swords and attempt to stop him, forcing him to evade them. Amid the chaos, Tao is determined not to be caught, understanding that the testing begins the next morning. He resolves that his first step toward vengeance will be surviving the testing, ultimately seeking to confront Kellen Okar and Abasi Odili and exact brutal justice in front of witnesses. In Chapter 3, Tao evades the city guards by climbing onto a roof and hiding until it's safe, then limps through the city's poorer districts, eventually sleeping in a narrow alley. At dawn, he sets out for the Heroes' Circle, where the Ihashi testing takes place, following other armed young men. He observes the applicants, realizing many are undertrained, malnourished low commons unlikely to pass, while he must be better than 9 of every 10 men to gain military status. The Ihashi officiate the matches, explaining the rules. 200 breath fights, points awarded for hits, no head strikes, stepping out equals loss, and victories across days are needed to advance. Tao is assigned a round against a governor-cast opponent taller and faster, who immediately tests him with aggressive attacks. Tao struggles, taking hits to his arm, thigh, and temple, falling behind in points. Despite anger and effort, he cannot match the governor's superior skill, losing the match and realizing the strength gap he must overcome to succeed. In Chapter 4, Tao struggles to accept that he cannot win by skill alone and channels his anger and past experiences to provoke his opponent, the governor, into making a fatal mistake. Using insults drawn from his childhood and Jabari's teasing, Tao goads the governor into striking him in the head, which is illegal, resulting in a disqualification and Tao's victory. Though he wins, Tao feels no satisfaction, knowing the governor was the stronger swordsman. He observes other matches in the Heroes' Circle, noting some are brutal and unskilled, while others are closer contests. Tao is then called for his next match against a low common, whom he defeats decisively, and later a high harvester, whom he also overcomes after a grueling fight lasting the full 200 count. Exhausted, sweat-soaked, and nearly overwhelmed, Tao survives the first day of testing, winning 4 matches and preparing for the even more difficult challenges of the following day. In Chapter 5, Brawl, Tao begins day 2 of the Heroes' Circle fatigued, injured, and sleep-deprived, walking with a limp from previous fights. He notices important observers like Jayed and resolves to impress them. His first opponent of the day is a stocky, bare-chested fighter. Tao discards his shield and engages immediately. Their fight is brutal and physical, with grapples, headbutts, kicks, and sword clashes. Tao sustains swelling around his eye and bleeding from a previous wound, but he injures the brawler's leg and forces him to the edge of the circle. Using superior technique and relentless strikes, Tao breaks the brawler's defense, disarms him, and finishes the match after a series of decisive hits, earning victory. Exhausted, bleeding, and barely able to stand, Tao drinks from a bucket to recover. He counts his wins and realizes he needs 5 more to secure his place among the Ihashi. He is called again, preparing for his 9th fight against a massive low common named Uduak. In Chapter 6, 9, Tao faces Uduak, a massive fighter wielding a great sword, shield, and wearing full armor. Tao reluctantly uses a shield to block Uduak's overwhelming attacks, but is repeatedly slammed, thrown, and injured. Despite being bloodied, battered, and nearly incapacitated, Tao manages to land a legal strike on Uduak, scoring a point. The crowd reacts wildly, and Jayadaim observes him. Uduak continues to dominate, disarming Tao and throwing him to the ground multiple times. In close combat, Tao attacks with fists and eventually picks up Uduak's great sword when the giant is temporarily disarmed, stabbing him into the chest, scoring another point. Uduak retaliates, shattering Tao's wrist with his shield. As Uduak prepares to finish him, the Proven intervenes, declaring the match over at 200, stopping Uduak from killing Tao. Tao is left battered, mangled, and knocked senseless, surviving the brutal confrontation but losing the fight. Part 5. In Chapter 1, Tao wakes on a straw pallet in the Ihashi barracks in Kigambi, his head throbbing and wrists splinted after his brutal fights. 2 men approach. Hadith, a wiry lesser with 10 wins, and Uduak, a massive fighter who had defeated Tao in the fighting circle. Despite Tao's inferior record of 5 wins, a tie, and a broken arm, all 3 are accepted as Ihashi initiates. Hadith explains that Uduak has been keeping an eye on Tao as his survival affects Uduak's standing. Jayadaim, the Umkondisi, brings food and water, tending to Tao's injuries, noting his determination and past potential from citadel testing. Jayed explains that Tao has been chosen for the Ihashi Isikolo to be tested in his experimental scale, aiming to turn lessers into warriors, capable of rivaling Ndlovu. Tao agrees to the rigorous training, committed to proving himself despite his broken arm, and is told that training begins after they travel to the southern Ihashe Isikolo the next day. In Chapter 2, Tao travels with Scale Jayed from Kigambi to the southern Ihashe Isikolo, joining 3,500 new initiates. He notes the physical prowess of Jayed's selected men, including Uduak and Hadith, who stand out even among the elite. The scale is already divided from other initiates, and Tao feels singled out as the least accomplished, having not completed 10 wins or reached day 3 of trials. The column runs across the valley under Jayed's orders, testing endurance despite Tao's injuries. Upon arrival, Jayed halts the column and introduces the Isikolo, a massive, fortified military academy built on Champion Siori's former camp, with thick walls, bronze gates, and extensive barracks, armory, training grounds, mess hall, and infirmary. Proven Guide. Limbani shows Tao and the scale to their quarters, where Tao meets Chinedu. Exhausted, Tao reflects on his father, Aaron, and contemplates the grueling training ahead, one cycle to become a killer capable of facing men like the Ndlovu. In Chapter 3, Tao begins his first day of training at the southern Ihashe Isikolo. After eating at the mess hall, he joins Scale Jayed and Akondiseanan on the Isikolo's vast training grounds, 1,000 strides across with packed clay and open space for combat drills. Jayed demonstrates the superiority of realistic combat training by using a wooden sword to overpower each initiate in turn, including Uduak, Chinedu, and Hadith, showing that caution and slow practice with bronze swords hinder true skill. Tao spars left-handed for the first time, nearly losing his weapon, and experiences firsthand Jayed's insistence that speed, adaptability, and aggression are vital. Too slow, and you're dead. Jayed explains that the Ihashe must be trained to multiply their effectiveness against numerically superior enemies. He emphasizes practical fighting over formalized forms, sending initiates back to reform lines and recover before the next session. The scale leaves for water and brief rest, preparing for the next phase of training. In Chapter 4, Tao continues training under Scale Jayed and Akondiseanan, learning that greatness comes at the cost of dedicating his life to the goal of becoming one of the Omehi's strongest fighters. Jayed emphasizes that natural advantages among nobles make them formidable, and Tao must adapt through practice and persistence. Tao spends the first morning sparring with his offhand due to his healing wrist, losing repeatedly and feeling ashamed. Over the next days, he focuses on mastering basic techniques, thrusts, lunges, and strikes, since Jayed rejects long, rigid forms in favor of adaptable fundamentals tailored to each fighter's strengths and weaknesses. Despite being mocked and isolated by other initiates, Tao pushes himself, refusing to surrender or call for divine aid. Jayed introduces optional early training sessions to reinforce progress, which Tao resolves to attend. Sparring with Hadith and Uduak continues to expose his weaknesses, leaving him bruised and determined to improve through extra effort. In Chapter 5, Tao arrives first at early morning practice, joined by Uduak, Hadith, Chinedu, Yao, and Jengo. Anan pairs them for sparring, and Tao faces Jengo. Despite using his offhand, Tao dominates the fight, hitting Jengo in the helmet, shoulder, and neck until Anan calls the match. Though victorious, the other men offer no praise. Training continues relentlessly. Hot days and nights leave Tao battered, yet he slowly begins to win matches, particularly against Jengo, though Uduak remains a formidable opponent. Over time, Jengo stops attending, leaving the others resentful. A moon cycle later, Jayed arrives unexpectedly to observe. He praises Tao and the other 4 as his chosen warriors, emphasizing the necessity of daily effort, intentional improvement, and sacrifice to gain power. Jayed demonstrates his black dragon scale dagger, warning of the consequences of complacency. He instructs them to skirmish against other scales to prepare for future battles with the Ndlovu. The men discuss the upcoming training, the odds against the nobles, and their determination to fight and win. In Chapter 6, Bronze, Tao returns to fighting with Bronze, wielding a practice sword and a shield to protect his broken wrist. He lines up with Yaw and Chinedu in Scale Jayed, facing Scale Chisomo, a disciplined but traditionalist Umkondisi. The skirmish begins under simple rules. A fighter is alive until incapacitated, touching the ground or surrendering. Scale Jayed charges, while Chisomo's men form a 3-pronged flanking maneuver. Tao and his comrades smash through the middle, engaging in chaotic, realistic combat. Tao adapts to the weight of bronze, defeating multiple opponents using his sword and shield. Working with Uduak, Hadith, Ya, and Shinedu, Tao's scale eliminates scale Chisomo entirely. Though 54 men started, only 32 survive. Jayed praises their victory but notes their lack of cohesion and emphasizes learning to work as a better scale. Survivors are granted the rest of the day, while the fallen are sent for additional training. Tao commits himself to relentless effort and self-improvement, vowing no days without difficulty. Part 6. In Chapter 1 of Battlegrounds, Tao trains under Scale Jayed, learning teamwork and battle tactics, surviving skirmishes alongside Ya, Chinedu, Hadith, and Uduak, who is killed in one fight but fights fiercely before falling. Tao struggles with self-discipline, reliving his father's death to push himself while the Omehi's war with the Hedani rages. Rumors of demon deaths among initiates heighten the sense of danger. Tao's wrist heals, allowing him to wield a blade though he favors his left hand. The scale marches to the crags to observe battle exercises, designed to emulate real combat against heavy odds and teach tactics against enervators, whose powers drag initiates' souls into Isihogo, exposing them to demons. Jayed explains the enervator's role in warfare. Tao studies the terrain, the fist, a natural barrier protecting the peninsula, and the crags, with rocky plateaus and mock cities simulating battlefield conditions, including a city replica used for the Queen's melee, demonstrating strategic and tactical challenges for the Scales and Initiates. In Chapter 2 of Enervated, Tao observes the battlefield as Scale Nigere faces the Citadel's nobles and their enervator in the desert. Umkondi Singere splits the Scale into 4 units to minimize the Gifted's impact, but once the Gifted unleashes her power, the Lessers are thrown into chaos. The Enervator's wave of energy incapacitates many, including Itembe, who suffers horrific hallucinations from the Gifted's attack. Despite clever tactics and bravery, Scale Njere is completely defeated, with only 2 Indlovu killed by the nobles. Tao helps the shaken Itembe to the healing tent, witnessing firsthand the devastating psychological effects of fighting a Gifted. Later, a northern Scale fights nobles without enervators and suffers heavy losses, reinforcing that natural talent and strength favor the nobles. Jayed explains that initiates are taught with eyes open to understand their disadvantages and challenges. Tao recognizes the system is designed to maintain the Lesser's place, while Citadel City offers rewards, distractions, and exposure to military power. In Chapter 3, Reunion Tao and the men of Scale Jayed arrive at Citadel City, a small fortified city with towering domes, Indlovu, Gifted, Guardian, and Sa citadels. Hadith explains the citadel's purpose. The Chosen occupy them, while Lessers like Tao serve as fodder for the military. The group enters the city, observing locals and noting the absence of drudge except in comfort lodges. They go to a rough drinking house, share masmas, and briefly relax, laughing over the drinks. Tao then sees Zuri, now a Gifted, walking in the streets. Overcome, he approaches her. They reunite, exchanging tense but heartfelt words. Zuri confronts him about the killings and his intentions, and Tao reassures her he is not ready to act. They talk about their current positions, abilities, and the state of Jabari. Their brief conversation is interrupted by drunk Indlovu initiates, forcing Tao to leave to avoid conflict. As they depart, Hadith reminds Tao that Zuri's role as Gifted binds her to a royal noble in the future, fueling Tao's resolve to train harder and face the coming skirmishes. In Chapter 4, Tao intensifies his training at the Isikalo, sparring in the mornings with Jayed, afternoons with the rest of the Scale, and nights with punished men. Ya occasionally joins, but eventually drops out, leaving Tao's reputation as a dedicated fighter to earn him respect among the initiates. Recovering from a wrist injury, Tao experiments with shields and heavier swords, but finds success only with one sword, favoring speed and aggression. His left hand surpasses his right, frustrating him as he struggles against the strongest fighters, including Hadith, Itembe, Yao, Runako, and Uduak. Betting on his sparring matches draws attention, increasing pressure for him to win. Training with Oibo, Tao tests endurance, parries, and riposte without committing to full attacks, but a broken wooden sword forces him to improvise. Using both blades, he overwhelms Oibo with a mirrored attack sequence, ultimately disarming and subduing him, proving his skill with dual wielding and securing a critical victory while refining his combat strategy. In Chapter 5, Anan calls Tao and Uduak to spar under the scorching sun, while the other initiates and Umkondisi gather to watch and bet. Tao enters with two wooden swords, intending to use the second to distract Uduak and create openings for his strong left hand. The strategy initially succeeds, scoring 2 quick hits, but proves too taxing. Realizing he cannot win by cautious dual wielding alone, Tao unleashes full power, allowing instincts from his right hand and training from the Isikolo to dominate. He drives Uduak to his knees, smashing his shield and clubbing his helmet, seeing not his sword brother but past opponents and his father's blood. Jayed intervenes, declaring the match a draw before Tao can kill Uduak. Both men are exhausted and injured. Tao aids in carrying Uduak to the infirmary, confronted with the reality of his own lethal potential, while Jayed advises him to continue training with 2 blades and warns of the consequences of unchecked rage. Part 7. In Chapter 1, Hadith urges Tao to visit Uduak, but Tao resists, still shaken by previous events. On the practice fields, Jayed intensifies training, emphasizing readiness for the Crags, Indlovu, and Enervators. Tao holds back initially, struggling with guilt and fear of losing control, but Jayed forces him to fight at full capacity. Tao spars with Chinedu, using both swords to strike from multiple angles, effectively disabling Chinedu while learning to anticipate attacks. Hadith and Yaw challenge Tao simultaneously, and he skillfully counters their combined assault, demonstrating superior speed, coordination, and dual sword techniques. Hadith attempts a sacrifice strike, but is disarmed and knocked down. Jayed declares the match a draw, reinforcing teamwork and discipline, and Tao reconciles with Hadith, acknowledging his sword brother. Following the session, Tao requests permission to leave the fields to visit Uduak in the infirmary, preparing to confront the consequences of his earlier actions and mend their strained relationship. In Chapter 2, Tao visits Uduak in the infirmary and finds him badly injured with welts, a splinted arm, and a swollen eye. Uduak jokingly insults Tao, calling him Ncheku, but the exchange softens as they acknowledge their bond as sword brothers. Uduak recounts his past, revealing he fought a petty noble and others, learning to channel a persistent inner drive he calls a demon. He explains that this same relentless force pushed him to fight Tao during testing and has never fully left him. Tao admits he must continue improving, and Uduak recognizes the demon within both of them, noting it motivates rather than destroys. Their conversation turns serious as Uduak confronts the fact he was defeated by Tao, though surrender was impossible because Tao would have killed him. They reconcile, and Tao reassures Uduak, while acknowledging the need to carry this drive forward as they prepare to face the Crags and challenge the nobles under Scale Jayed. In Chapter 3, Scale Jayed arrives at the Crags without Uduak, who is recovering from injuries. Jayed appoints Hadith as Inkokeli to oversee strategy, and Hadith reviews battle plans with Tao, Yao, Chinedu, Oyibo, Runako, Themba, and Makiwa. Tao reluctantly participates, focusing on following orders rather than understanding tactics. The men prepare for skirmishes against the Indlovu and their Enervator, an inexperienced gifted, whose attacks can sap their energy. They maneuver through a mock urban battleground toward a strategic circle designed for Hadith's superior numbers to dominate. Tao, Yao, Chinedu, and Oyibo hold a narrow side path to prevent flanking. Tao engages multiple Indlovu, sustaining fierce combat, but using strategy to overcome them. When the Enervator unleashes enervation, Tao and the others are trapped in a shadowed realm filled with demons. He fights through the illusion, saving Yaw, and emerges uninjured. The Enervator breaks down in tears, and Tao, Yaw, and Oyibo regroup to assist their allies and continue the contest. In Chapter 4, Skirmish, Tao emerges into a battle between 7 Indlovu and 11 Scale Jayed sword brothers. The fight is chaotic, with smaller duels breaking out. Hadith struggles against 2 Indlovu while Tao rushes to assist. Tao confronts Zesiro Opio, a second cycle Indlovu and Inkokeli of Scale Oyana in a duel. Despite Zesiro's skill, Tao's relentless training and exhaustion from previous fights give him the advantage. Tao systematically breaks Zesiro's defense, damages his hand, and ultimately incapacitates him, leaving him unconscious. Meanwhile, Hadith and 2 other sword brothers defeat their lone opponent. The remaining Indlovu are outnumbered 9-2. Tao, fatigued but determined, prepares to engage the final enemies, but Hadith signals the end is near. Facing overwhelming odds, the last Indlovu nobles surrender, acknowledging the goddess's mercy. The Scale. Jayed emerge victorious, their training, discipline, and unity decisively winning the skirmish. In Chapter 5, Legend, Tau and the Scale watch the Northern Isikalo face the Enervator and Indlovu. Despite fierce fighting, the Enervator unleashes her powers, taking 16 men and allowing the Indlovu to brutally defeat the rest, leaving serious injuries. Tau and Hadith help the wounded, carrying them to the infirmary, inspiring pride among the Northern Ihashe. Following the skirmish, the Southern and Northern Isikalo combine forces and head to Citadel City to celebrate. In a drinking house, Yaw recounts Tau's path, detailing Tau's duel with two Indlovu and the Enervator, emphasizing his bravery and tactical skill. The men cheer, celebrating victory and the promise of future triumphs. Jayed and Anand discuss the dominance of certain scales in the Queen's melee, noting how success and reputation perpetuate advantage. Tau memorizes the top scales expected to qualify. Later, he leaves the drinking house and goes to the circle in Citadel City, hoping to see Zuri and finds her waiting. In Chapter 6, Gifts, Tau meets Zuri at the bench and they share a quiet moment together. She congratulates him on winning against the Indlovu and their Enervator, explaining that Preceptor Inti is punished and sent to the front while Nemisa takes newcomer lessons. Tau struggles with the moral weight of their victory, recognizing the suffering caused to the losing side. They discuss the harshness of skirmishes, the scale system, and how lessers can occasionally succeed. Tau asks Zuri about Kellen Okar's scale, she confirms he is Scaleosa, and then about enervation. Zuri explains that enervation pulls a soul into Isihogo, the prison of Ukufa and his demons, and details its history. She recounts how Ananthi created the universe, life, and the Omehi as her chosen, and how Ukufa corrupted mortals, leading to a devastating war that fractured the world. Ananthi ultimately trapped Ukufa and the corrupted in a prison creating mortality, but some called to Ukufa for immortality, initiating the Cull. In Chapter 7 of Breathe, Tau learns from Zuri about Isihogo, the underworld, where souls draw energy from Ananthi. Zuri explains that everyone can enter Isihogo, but only the gifted, usually Omehi women, can shroud their soul's light, allowing them to safely draw energy without being attacked by demons. Demons cannot harm souls that avoid taking energy, but anyone drawing energy risks being killed. Tau realizes that the Enervator attacks he faces in battle forcibly shift his soul to Isihogo, leaving him dazed and vulnerable. He insists on learning to resist enervation to remain effective in combat. Zuri warns that a soul in Isihogo is highly vulnerable, time moves differently, and death is the only certain way to exit if one loses control. Despite the danger, Tau decides to attempt entering Isihogo to gain first-hand experience, practicing under Zuri's guidance by focusing on breathing, relaxation, and visualizing the underworld while keeping his soul anchored to Umlaba. In Chapter 8, Tau finds himself in a twisted, shadowed version of Citadel City within the circle, surrounded by the underworld's mists. Zuri appears next to him, shrouded in darkness, warning that demons are coming. Two demons, a massive biped with a huge maw and a quadruped with pointed ears and inky skin, charge him. Tau attempts to hide his soul's light, resisting the pull of Ananthi's oppressive energy, realizing it is both a prison for the demons and the source of power for the gifted. Despite his efforts, his light remains visible. He draws his swords and fights the demons. The quadruped is struck down, but the larger demon rakes his stomach with claws, tearing him apart. Though he feels the pain, it is an illusion. Zuri snaps him back to reality. Exhausted and shaken, Tau leans on Zuri for support, and she escorts him near the city gates, sharing a brief, reassuring kiss. Tau rejoins his sword brothers, though he remains haunted by the encounter. Part 8. In Chapter 1 games, Tau rises before dawn to train on the practice field, exhausted from nightmares and prayers against Isihogo. Hadith, Ya, Chinedu, and the newly assigned Oibo join him. Tau welcomes Oibo, who struggles to meet his gaze, then spars with him, winning decisively, reinforcing Oibo's confidence. Tau then pairs with Hadith, who notes Tau's extraordinary skill and relentless dedication, remarking that Tau's early arrival and intense training set him apart. They discuss balance in life versus the pursuit of mastery, with Hadith advocating enjoying life while training, and Tau focused solely on preparation and vengeance. Uduak arrives for a rematch, joined by Jayed and Anan, and Tau engages warmly, re-establishing the group as Jayed 6. Training continues through the day and into the next, with Tau obsessively preparing for the upcoming skirmish, aiming for victory to earn a chance at the Queen's melee and an opportunity to face Kellen. Tao frames his training as driven by revenge and mastery of the sword. Part 8. In Chapter 2, Mercy, the battle on the mountain battleground intensifies under the scorching sun. Scale Jayed's forces are heavily reduced. Only Hadith, Uduak, Oyibo, and Tao remain. Yao and Chinadu are down. The Indlovu hold the high ground, and the Enervator's presence threatens them, though her exact location is uncertain. Hadith organizes a three-pronged assault. Tao leads the left, Uduak the right, and Hadith the center, aiming to engage the Enervator. Tao's team faces demons and relentless Indlovu nobles as he channels his training from Izihogo, resisting enervation effects while charging toward the Enervator. In combat, Tao struggles against two nobles, sustaining multiple injuries but refuses to retreat. Oyibo briefly assists Tao but is brutally killed by a noble after pleading for mercy. Enraged, Tao overwhelms the remaining nobles with precise, brutal strikes, incapacitating them. The chapter ends with Tao victorious over the nobles, witnessing the cost of mercy and the brutality of the battle. In Chapter 3, Murderer, Tao confronts the aftermath of Oyibo's death during the first skirmish. Overcome with rage, he strikes at a noble who refused mercy, but Uduak intervenes, saving Tao and subduing the noble. The battlefield is chaotic, though Tao's allies ultimately defeat the remaining Indlovu and secure the Enervator. Oyibo's body is prepared for burning, and the Citadel Umkondisi debate, punishing Tao for his emotional response, but Jayed and others defend him, arguing his grief justified his actions. The second skirmish proceeds despite proposals to cancel it, resulting in further losses, though the scale celebrates victory while mourning Oyibo. Tao, numb and solitary, seeks Zuri, who has been waiting anxiously. They share a private moment of grief and comfort. Their reunion is interrupted by three Indlovu, prompting Tao to defend Zuri, quickly subduing them. Among them, Tao recognizes Kellanokar, the third cycle Indlovu responsible for Oyibo's murder, setting the stage for confrontation and revenge. In Chapter 4, Duel, Tao confronts Kellanokar, the Indlovu responsible for his father's death, fueled by rage and memories of past loss. Tao attacks with dual swords, but Kellan's skill surpasses his, blocking and countering every strike. Tao's scale brothers, Hadith and Uduak, are present but hesitant to intervene, while other Indlovu form a tense standoff around the circle. Exhausted and near defeat, Tao contemplates dying before achieving justice. Zuri returns with Jayed, and she intervenes, enervating Kellan and halting the duel. Tao attempts to strike Kellan, but Zuri prevents him. Jayed restrains Tao, declaring the fight illegal as blood duels are forbidden between initiates. Kellan, still recovering, declines to press charges, deferring to Zuri's judgment. After calming the outraged Indlovu and leaving the circle, Kellan and his entourage depart, while one noble insults Tao, ignored due to Jayed's intervention. Tao is pulled to safety with the scale following, ending the immediate confrontation. In Chapter 5, Jayed leads his men and Tao through the city, fearing the consequences if the Citadel Umkondisi learn about the duel. He chastises Tao for attacking Kellanokar, explaining that Okar acted under orders from the Guardian Council and spared Tao's father, emphasizing Tao's extraordinary skill compared to his father. Jayed reflects on Tao's development since witnessing his father's death, noting the boy's resilience and growth into a weapon-like fighter. He recounts how he manipulated the testing and training to advance Tao, recognizing him as a symbol of hope for creating stronger warriors. Jayed reveals his goal of developing a new caste of cross-blooded fighters, blending noble and lesser traits to strengthen their forces against the war with the Hedony. Tao realizes that some of his peers in Jayed's scale are cross-caste. The chapter ends with Tao challenging Jayed to a duel at dawn, asserting his determination to discover his own place and potential. In Chapter 6 of Pyrrhic, Tao trains in the practice yards before sparring with Jayed at dawn. Jayed, older, scarred, and stronger, engages Tao in a brutal duel, testing both their skill and endurance. The fight evolves from controlled technique to raw force, each pushing the other to physical limits. Tao channels his desire for mastery and revenge, striking repeatedly, eventually wounding Jayed multiple times. Amidst the combat, Jayed shares personal losses, his wife, his daughter Jamila, and the toll of war on their people, revealing the emotional weight behind their fight. He explains that the royal nobles and Guardian Council have lost perspective, blind to the real threat, the Hedeni beyond the peninsula. Despite Tao's fury and loyalty to avenging his father, Jayed insists that survival depends on peace rather than endless cross-caste warfare. Tao rejects this, determined to continue fighting, believing that true limits are set by determination and effort, not birth or status. Part 9. In Chapter 1 of Lesser, Tao struggles with exhaustion after consecutive days of intense training following his duel with Jayed, sleeping only 3 spans per night. Despite his determination, he is forbidden from joining his scale in the next skirmish, as Jayed believes Tao must remain under supervision for safety and focus. Tao's frustration leads him to overtrain, physically dominating his sword brothers and relentlessly practicing alone, even after a fever incapacitates him for 2 days. Jayed visits, questioning Tao's self-destructive drive, emphasizing that time is equally limited for all, and reminding him that intelligent, disciplined effort is the path to improvement. Tao continues to push himself beyond natural limits, recognizing that, despite Jayed's methods, he cannot yet surpass a greater noble like Kellen Okar. A rare lightning storm inspires him with a transformative insight, offering a path beyond being a skilled lesser. Tao kneels, accepting Isihogo's guidance, committing to strive for something greater than mere skill or revenge. In Chapter 2 of Isihogo, Tao enters the mist-shrouded practice yards and confronts terrifying demons. The first is a massive pincered creature, and Tao attacks it with his swords, but his efforts barely damage it. A second demon approaches, and Tao realizes he cannot escape or defeat them alone. As the pincered monster breaks his arm, he feels Isihogo's immense power offering itself, but before he can draw it, the second demon snaps his spine. A third demon attacks, tearing his face and body, inflicting excruciating pain and near death. Tao's consciousness fractures, and he experiences partial death while fighting in the underworld. When he returns to his body at the edge of the practice yards, he is disoriented, trembling, and degraded, but alive. Through this brutal encounter, Tao comprehends that Isihogo has answered his prayers. By repeatedly facing death and drawing on the underworld's power, he can multiply his training, making one span and one cycle far more potent, potentially becoming the greatest warrior in Omehi history. In Chapter 3 of Count, Tao wakes after a night in the practice yards, exhausted and still processing the trauma of his previous encounters in Isihogo. He interacts briefly with Shinedu and other sword brothers, noting his body is intact but tingling from remembered injuries. After cleaning himself, Tao returns to the yards, determined to continue training in the underworld. That night, he faces multiple demons. He is attacked, severely injured, loses a leg below the knee in one encounter, and has his calf tendons torn in another. Despite repeated brutalizations, including a demon slicing his throat, he survives each time and returns to Umlaba, physically and mentally recovering between cycles. Recognizing the potential of Isihogo's realm, Tao begins systematically pushing his limits, forcing himself to die and fight repeatedly to maximize the value of each session. He counts his battles each night, striving to surpass previous totals, though he keeps this regimen secret, and his relentless effort does not go unnoticed by his scale. In Chapter 4 of Borders, Tao is ordered by Jayed to spar against Yao, Chinedu, and Hadith. Tao defeats all 3 quickly and efficiently, demonstrating his skill and composure. When Uduak joins, revealed in Tao's perception as a horned demon, the fight intensifies, but Tao still overpowers him, earning the astonishment of the scale, including Anan and Hadith. Tao's peers discuss his abilities, speculating that he possesses a demon within, which unnerves him, but he focuses on training for the upcoming skirmish. Following the sparring, Tao and the scale run circuits around the practice yards, enduring grueling physical routines. Over the following days, Tao trains obsessively, fighting, dying, eating, and sleeping in relentless repetition, while neglecting personal care and experiencing increasing visions that blur the line between reality and Isihogo. Military events unfold outside the Isikolo. The Hedeni push into Omehi territory, causing massive casualties and moving the front lines. Tao remains focused on winning the next skirmish, which will determine qualification for the Queen's melee. In Chapter 5, Tao's scale faced Scale Osanaki in a skirmish that would determine entry into the Queen's melee. Tao observed the battlefield from a dune, noting the Enervator positioned atop a central dune with 4 Indlovu. Recognizing the threat, Tao planned a flanking attack, taking Uduak, Yao, Muvato, Duma, and Themba to approach the Enervator from an unexpected angle. The goal was to force her to expend her powers, allowing the rest of the scale to engage the remaining Indlovu evenly. Tao's team crawled toward the dune, encountering 3 Ndlovu along the way. Tao fought them, killing or incapacitating several, but 8 additional Ndlovu appeared, and the Enervator and her 4 were unaccounted for, threatening Hadith and the rest of Tao's scale. Despite being injured, bloodied, and surrounded, Tao continued to fight the Ndlovu, engaging multiple opponents simultaneously while sustaining cuts and strikes, determined to protect his team and confront the nobles. In Chapter 6, Tao fights 8 Ndlovu alone, managing to break the wrist of one noble and severely injure another, but is overwhelmed and knocked unconscious, losing one of his swords. Despite being surrounded, the coordinated efforts of Hadith, Uduak, Kwende, and Mashindi defeat the remaining Ndlovu, securing their path to the queen's melee. Tao awakens in a noble infirmary, head bandaged, and learns from Anan and Jayed that their group of 49 Ihashi successfully repelled the 5 Ndlovu, an unprecedented victory for lessers. The team celebrates their achievement, noting that it is the first time in 23 cycles lessers have advanced to the melee, and the Ihashi have never placed at the event. Jayed warns Tao about potential dangers from Kelenokar, but Tao decides to rest and train, preparing for the upcoming Queen's melee. The chapter ends with plans for recovery, celebration, and renewed focus on training. Part 10. In Chapter 1, Prisoners, a moon cycle afterscale. Jayed's victory, Scala Chisomo leaves the southern Isikolo to compete for a final spot in the Queen's melee, while Tao remains behind to train. Tao endures nightly torments from the underworld, embracing pain and death at the hands of demons to sharpen his instinct for combat. These experiences leave him transfigured, gaining a preternatural intuition despite being an unremarkable common. Exhausted after a grueling evening, he almost misses Akandisi Fanaka, who summons him to the dignitary rooms in the Umkondisi quarter. Tao is unsettled by Fanaka's demonic visage, but masks his reaction, showing respect and deference. The Umkondisi quarter is hidden, well-kept and tightly packed, with the third building on the right marked by a bronze door engraved with a map of the peninsula, symbolizing Omehi boundaries and their isolation. Tao approaches this door, understanding the limits of their knowledge and the prison their homeland represents before it opens to reveal Zuri. In Chapter 2, Unmoored, Tao encounters Zuri in the Umkondisi quarter. Startled by her sudden appearance, he instinctively defends himself with a dagger, misreading her intentions. Zuri reacts with shock and anger, believing Tao abandoned her after he attacked a greater noble in Citadel City and survived subsequent dangers, including the Ndlovu. She expresses frustration and hurt over his absence, revealing she risked a permitted journey home from her gifted training to confront him. Tao explains he had reasons for his actions, but struggles to justify them. Their confrontation evolves into an emotional exchange, where Zuri admits her lingering feelings of anger, love, and resentment, and Tao confesses regret for the life they could have shared. They acknowledge their commitment to the ongoing conflict and its moral compromises. The chapter concludes with Zuri leading Tao to a bath and shave, temporarily grounding him in ordinary care and intimacy. In Chapter 3, Forbidden, Tao followed Zuri through opulent rooms, noting her elevated status among the gifted. She led him to a private bath, insisting he clean himself before continuing. Tao was initially hesitant, but Zuri compelled him into the tub, washing him with soap and gently shaving his face and head. During the process, Tao relived traumatic memories from Isihogo, momentarily panicking when she brought a small bronze dagger near him, but Zuri remained deliberate and careful. Afterward, Zuri entered the water herself, still clothed in her robes, and initiated a physical and intimate encounter with Tao. Despite the moral prohibition, Tao struggled to resist, and they gave in to desire, sharing an extended, mutual sexual experience in the bath. Exhausted but connected, Zuri suggested moving the encounter to the bed, and Tao complied, following her as she removed her robes and prepared for the next stage of their forbidden intimacy. In Chapter 4 of Survival, Tao shares an intimate moment with Zuri, expressing his love and desire for a life with her, while she worries about the dangers he faces. Tao reveals that he travels to Isihogo to confront demons, risking his life repeatedly, and is driven by justice and vengeance against the nobles. Zuri explains the nature of the gifted, including their powers of enervation, enraging, edification, and entreating, which allow them to manipulate energy, communicate across distances, and connect souls in Isihogo. She details the Hex system, where 5 gifted link souls to control immature dragons under the Guardian Keep, a process that causes death with each dragon's call. Zuri emphasizes the constant threat from the Hedeni and the depletion of gifted over cycles. Tao's training to become an intreater begins, but he remains determined to grow stronger. As Zuri sleeps, Tao prepares to leave for Karem, aware that danger and reckoning await. Part 11. In Chapter 1 of Council, Tao struggles with thoughts of Zuri while walking with his sword brothers to the mess hall after training. The Queen's melee is approaching, a contest testing the Omehi's best fighters, with altered rules favoring the lessers, who have not competed in 23 cycles. Tao plans to protect Scale Jayed, defeat Kellen Okar in the melee, and later challenge Abasiodili for his father's death. As Tao walks, Abasiodili and 18 Indlovu enter the academy, triggering violent thoughts in Tao, restrained by Hadith and Uduak. Tao reveals to them that Odili's body killed his father after Tao defeated a noble named Kagiso Okafor, who attempted to harm him. Hadith explains that Tao must wait until after the melee and graduation, when he becomes a full-blood and can duel nobles safely. Tao reluctantly agrees to hold off revenge, swearing to act later while Uduak and Hadith support him. In Chapter 2 of Stones, rumors in the mess hall suggest that Jayed will accompany Abasiodili when he leaves the Asikalo, worrying Tao because it could interfere with his plans for revenge. After training, Tao takes his father's and grandfather's swords and secretly follows the Indlovu convoy into the night. The convoy marches north toward the crags and Citadel City, confirming the rumors that Odili intends to bring Jayed back to the Guardian Council. Tao hides in the grasslands, avoiding detection, and observes the Indlovu being joined by a second unit guarding 2 riders, the Queen's Champion and the Kaid of the Gifted Citadel, accompanied by 3 hooded Gifted and 2 Inganyama. The main group climbs the crags, leaving horses and Indlovu behind, while Tao navigates a hidden route to follow unseen. Midway up, he notices a scout moving above the climb, watching Odili's group, and hides behind a rock, realizing the Gifted Scout and her raiding party are positioned above the group he is tracking. In Chapter 3 of Abomination, Tao observes a tense confrontation between the Queen's Champion Abshir Okar and Warlord Achak of the Hedeni, who arrives with over 60 warriors. Abshir announces that Queen Siora has agreed to peace with the Zidin, including the installment of Achak's son, Kana, as regent alongside her during the merger of the Omehi and Zidin. Tao notices that Kana brings a tortured Gifted, missing a hand, injured in multiple ways, and blindfolded as proof of Achak's power. The Kaid reacts with anger, but Abasiodili calls for calm, preventing further violence. Achak signals a skinny Hedeni who begins a ritual, transforming Kana into a massive, monstrous abomination with enhanced muscles and bone structure. The Omehi, Abshir, and Kaid are horrified at the display, while Tao witnesses the Gifted crying in distress. Achak proclaims the transformation as a means for the Zidin to reconnect with the spirit world, demonstrating their power and terrifying those present. In Chapter 4, Warlord Achak demands the Kaid surrender the Gifted who can teach magic to the Zidin. Kaid Oro sends forward Jamila, Tao's presumed daughter, who unleashes a wave of enervation, incapacitating all Hedeni except a single skinny Gifted man. Abshir kneels before Achak, offering peace, which Achak reluctantly accepts under the Shul's orders, though he desires the extermination of the Omehi. The Shul arranges a political marriage between Kana and Queen Siora to secure peace, committing Achak's son to its success. Jamila joins the Shidin voluntarily to teach them, despite her father Jayed's anguish. Achak warns that any harm to his son or delays in peace give him the opportunity to continue war. The Kaid ensures Jamila's safety and cooperation. After the Zidin leave, Jayed is restrained and guided away by Abshir to prevent interference, while Tao remains alert, prepared for any threat. In Chapter 5, Tao encounters a Zidin scout in the night, but neither attacks. The scout's disease-ridden neck and tentative stance make him hesitate, knowing killing her could compromise peace with the Zidin and cost him his life if discovered. After a tense silent standoff, they cautiously back away and part, leaving Tao troubled by the complexities of peace. He returns to the southern Asikalo as the Omehi finalize a political settlement with the Shidin, which includes a regent marrying Queen Siora. Tao worries this peace will erode Omehi culture, military, and hierarchy over generations. At the Asikalo, Tao joins his comrades Hadith, Uduak, and Themba for melee training. They spar against other scales in mock urban battles where Tao demonstrates exceptional skill, earning praise as potentially goddess-blessed. Despite Themba's antics, Tao focuses on honing his abilities alone into the night, contemplating the coming Queen's melee and realizing that achieving victory and survival will require killing 3 men before peace can truly follow. Part 12. In Chapter 1 of Melee, the Queen's melee begins with Scale Jayed facing the nobles of Scale Ozioma on the crowded Crags battleground. Queen Siora plans to attend the final day to meet the Guardian Council secretly, while Tao struggles with fears about the Omehi and his demon visions. Scale Jayed, led by Hadith and Anan, uses strategic tactics. Uduak's unit serves as a reserve to reinforce failing lines, exploiting the melee's rule that only surviving numbers matter. Tao fights fiercely, cutting through the Ndlovu and nobles, driving fear and chaos into the enemy ranks. Despite exhaustion and trauma, Tao's skill helps Scale Jayed win the skirmish, leaving the nobles of Ozioma decimated. As Tao exits the battlefield, the lessers and citizens salute him in respect. Encouraged by Hadith, Tao addresses the crowd, shouting, "Where we fight," triggering their powerful chant, "The world burns," a moment signaling unity, reverence, and the looming escalation of conflict. In Chapter 2, Tao collapses on a cot after the day's fighting, exhausted but recognized by Hadith for inspiring his men and proving their value beyond the nobles' perception. Tao learns Uduak's unit held the ridge against the Ndlovu, though they lost 17 men. Utiba fled, prompting Tao to reassign Uduak to replace him. Hadith warns Tao against advancing too far ahead, emphasizing the risk to himself and his brothers. Later, the Northern Isikolos proven guards keep the scales sequestered while Jayed and Anan review the day's victory and plan for tomorrow. The next skirmish pits them against Scale Ohualape, who has lost only 10 men and will outnumber Tao's side on open grasslands, a disadvantageous terrain meant to teach Inkokeli strategy against superior numbers. Tao walks at night to Isihogo. In a private conversation, Jayed praises Tao's leadership and determination, urging him to consider Hadith's risky plan, which could allow the lessers to reach the semifinals with Tao as the pivotal element. In Chapter 3, the Queen's melee quarterfinals begin on the grasslands, a killing field favoring the outnumbered nobles. Tao and Scale Jayed face Scale Ojualape, led by the greater noble Inkokeli Mayumbu Opayemi. The field is open, with no cover or tactics, and the crowds gather to witness the battle. Hadith reassures Tao and Yaw that his plan will work, baiting the proud nobles into overconfidence. As the scales advance, Hadith challenges Mayumbu to a duel of champions, proposing that the winning scale proceeds while the losing scale concedes, minimizing overall casualties. Mayumbu, a skilled and broad-shouldered greater noble, initially resists but is compelled to accept by the crowd and Mkondisi officials. The rules allow the duel, though Ojualape could still fight afterward. Tao was named as Scale Jayed's representative, a common and lesser, mocking Mayumbu's pride and forcing him to fight in the name of honor. Both combatants charge, swords ready, beginning the decisive duel that will determine the scale's fate. In Chapter 4, Common, Tao defeats greater noble Inkokeli Mayumbu Opayemi in the single combat duel arranged by Hadith. The fight begins with Mayumbu's initial strike, which Tao narrowly avoids, countering by breaking Mayumbu's wrist and stabbing him through the gap in his armor. Mayumbu, a massive and skilled fighter, struggles but is ultimately overpowered. Tao finishes him by striking his helmeted head, felling him. Following the duel, the rest of the Scale Orualape, honoring their promise, calls for mercy, conceding the skirmish. The Citadel officiant declares Scale Jayed the winner, advancing them to the semifinals. The crowd erupts in celebration, and Tao's scale rejoices, drumming, dancing, and splashing water. Hadith notes that Tao's victory exceeds expectations, as the plan only anticipated dispatching one opponent. Jayed announces their next battle. In the semifinals, Scale Jayed will face Scale OSA on the urban battleground at dusk, who has lost no men in previous matches. Tao readies himself for the upcoming fight. Part 13. In Chapter 1, OSA, Tao and his unit of 6 Ihashi are trapped in a crumbling building surrounded by 27 Ndlovu after Uduak and Yaw's units are lost. The skirmish began with Tao, Runako, and the twins, Kwende and Mishinda, operating as a small strike team, assassinating isolated Ndlovu, but Kellen's force is adjusted, keeping their men together. Uduak's unit is overwhelmed and carried off the battlefield, likely alive, due to Tao and his unit engaging the Ndlovu and distracting them. Tao's team sustains losses, retreating into the buildings to evade pursuit. Kellen surrounds them, demanding they surrender and accept the goddess's mercy, but Tao, Hadith, and the others recognize a tactical opportunity in Kellen's need to split his forces. Despite being heavily outnumbered, Tao prepares to fight, driven by the desire to confront Kellen directly. When Kellen taunts him about his father's death, Tao exits the building, determined to face him. In Chapter 2 of Kellen Okar, Kellen prepares to confront Tao Salaran, the Khamen of Karem, under orders from Guardian Counselor Abasi Odili. Kellen's men surround the building, but Tao, a skilled Ihashi warrior, wields 2 swords and moves with inhuman speed. Kellen has personal stakes. Tao's father was killed under his father's orders, and Kellen seeks to maintain Odili's patronage to secure his path to becoming an Inganyama, necessary to save his family and claim honor. Kellen had previously encountered Tao indirectly and was warned by the gifted initiate Zuri about harming him. On the battlefield, Kellen underestimates Tao, planning a staged blow, but Tao outmatches him in skill and speed, wounding him repeatedly. Despite Kellen's strength, size, and experience, he is overpowered, sustaining serious injuries to his neck, arm, rib, chest, and hip. The chapter ends with Kellen severely wounded, realizing the Khamen intends to kill him, and he must fight to survive. In Chapter 3 of Ashes, Tao confronts Okar, who is wounded and disarmed, taunting him for failing as a greater noble. Kellen intervenes, urging Tao to wait, but Tao's fury and desire for vengeance drive him to fight the approaching Indlovu from Scale OSA. He battles fiercely, killing and maiming several opponents while sustaining injuries, searching for Kellen to ensure he does not escape. Despite Tao's skill, the odds are overwhelming, and Kellen positions himself safely among his men. As Tao prepares to strike Jabari, Jayed arrives, surrendering Scale Jayed to Scale OSA and ending the fight officially. The Indlovu, though ready to continue, are forced to stand down, securing victory for Scale OSA. Tao, enraged and defiant, lashes out verbally at Kellen and Okar, but is restrained by Jayed. The chapter concludes with the crowd silent, the nobles anxious, the lessers enraged, and Scale Jayed eliminated from the tournament. Part 14. In Chapter 1 of Secrets, Tao is injured and taken by Jayed and Anand to a private tent in the crags rather than the lesser infirmary. A Sa priest treats his wounds and reassures him he will recover. While resting, Tao reflects on his hesitation during the melee and the inability to kill Kellen. Hadith visits, chastising Tao for acting alone and missing the chance to change the balance of power. Tao explains he sought revenge, not cast change, but Hadith insists the war affects all and that unity is needed. Zuri enters, revealing that the gifted citadel has learned the Queen plans to meet the Guardian Council and military leadership soon, potentially graduating initiates early for a massive attack against the Hedeni. She confesses her involvement with Kellen Okar, who had acted under orders to spare Tao and Aran. Surrounded by demons, Tao realizes the Queen's meeting is likely to arrange surrender, not war. Frustrated and betrayed, he leaves Zuri to confront Jayed, vowing no more secrets. In Chapter 2, Horns, Tao seeks out Jayed in the Scales tent to discuss urgent matters despite the danger of armed Indlovu in the Lesser Crags. Jayed reluctantly allows Tao to speak, and they move away from the encampment to a private location. Tao confronts Jayed about following him and Odili into the crags, and about his desire for justice through violence, particularly against the Queen's champion's nephew. Jayed urges Tao to trust those who care for him and explains that the war cannot be surrendered without losing everything. He reveals that Queen Siora is working toward peace with the Jidin, despite Odili's schemes to punish him and manipulate his daughter Jamila into the conflict. Jayed stresses that peace will protect the majority of the Omehi people, even if it sacrifices his daughter temporarily. Their conversation is cut short when war horns signal a sudden invasion, forcing them to run and prepare for battle. In Chapter 3, Peace, the crags erupt in chaos as Omehi warriors, including full-blooded Ihashe and Indlovu, prepare for battle against the invading Hedeni. Jayed rallies his Scale, urging them to gather arms, bring water, and fight as full-blooded warriors, emphasizing loyalty and survival. Tao observes the army assembling, noting as injured comrades Uduak and Ya. Hadith explains that the timing of the Hedeni invasion is ironically favorable, coinciding with the Queen's melee and the presence of the assembled army, preventing the enemy from seizing the valley. The Omehi form strategic formations, or claws, to confront the invaders at the Fist. Jayed joins Inkokalioluchi's wing, forming the center prong with full bloods and a gifted enervator. Orders are given, morale speeches delivered, and the men march in unison toward the battlefield. Tau notes the absence of key allies, including Zuri and Kellen, and receives news of a nearby ambush. Scale OSA reports Odahambo's wing has been decimated by a dragon's worth of Hideni. In Chapter 4, Tau is urgently summoned by an injured Ndlovu from Scale OSA, who warns that the prince and much of the wing are dying. Tau learns that Inkokeliokar is enraged by a gifted, and the battle is critical. Oluchi commands the wing to split, sending groups to flank and redirect, then leads the charge to defend the queendom and the prince. The forces encounter Wing Odahambo in retreat, and Jayed proposes holding a defensive position, but Tau and Oluchi push forward, unwilling to wait. The gully becomes a chaotic battlefield, with small pockets of Omehi forces being overwhelmed by the Jidin and their massive lizard-mounted units. Tau spots Zuri alive near a boulder, sustaining Kellen Okar's enraging. Despite the Ndlovu's bravery, they are heavily outnumbered. Tau fights through the Zidin to reach Kellen and urges him to retreat to save Zuri and the remaining men. Kellen reluctantly orders a retreat, but the battle has already become a disastrous rout. In Chapter 5, Daso, head taker of the Tanga, is established as an unmatched warrior. From a young age, she overpowered her father, claiming authority in her household, and went on to become renowned for her skill in wrestling, spearfighting, and battlefield combat. Daso fought invaders in the Fire Demon Desert, killing countless gray-clad warriors and leather-armored men, gaining honor, a family, and a powerful shaman bond that amplified her strength, speed, and resilience beyond mortal limits. During battle, Daso confronts Jayed, a skilled invader who fights with two swords, resisting her lethal strikes. Despite sustaining cuts, Daso's magic protects her, allowing her to maim Jayed, leaving him to suffer rather than granting a swift death. As Two Swords, another invader, approaches, Daso observes his deadly prowess in killing multiple Tongan warriors. Recognizing he is no ordinary man, she retreats strategically to preserve the shaman's magic, acknowledging that Two Swords is more than human and beyond her normal reckoning. Part 15. In Chapter 1, Conclave, Tau fights amid the chaos of a battle against the Zidin, but is paralyzed by grief when Jayed, his close ally, is mortally wounded by a Hedena. Despite Kellen Okar's orders to retreat, Tau stays with Jayed until he dies, receiving his guardian dagger and learning that his daughter, Jamila, is in enemy hands. The surviving forces, including Tau, Zuri, Kellen, Hadith, Uduak, Ya, and Themba, flee the collapsing front lines, leaving many comrades dead. As they regroup, Tau explains that Jayed had pursued peace talks with Queen Siora, who had been negotiating secretly despite the nobles' opposition. The Hedena's actions during the conclave revealed the Jidin's aggressive intentions, and Jamila, a powerful entreater, was to be used to call a guardian dragon to strike at the conclave, which would put her at mortal risk. Tau, Zuri, and the survivors realize that their actions inadvertently triggered the Zidin invasion, and Citadel City is now under siege, marking the failure of the Omehi defense. In Chapter 2, Youngling, Kellen orders his group to Citadel City, leaving the wounded to hide from the Zidin. Tau stays with Zuri, exhausted from their journey. At the city gates, full-blooded Ndlovu guards initially hesitate but allow entry once Kellen identifies himself. He seeks an audience with the Guardian Council, warning of the Hideni invasion. The Ndlovu inform him a seditious faction has temporarily seized the Guardian Keep, but assure him Inkokeli Odili will suppress the traitors. Kellen realizes Odili's actions indicate a coup against Queen Siora. Tau, Zuri, and Hadith debate their limited options, acknowledging the Queen's survival depends on swift action. Zuri reveals a tunnel, the youngling beneath the Guardian Keep, as a potential path to aid her. Internal tensions rise as some of Scale OSA refuse to act, but Jabari and the remaining men choose loyalty. Kellen, Tau, Zuri, and their allies march toward the gifted citadel, committed to saving the Queen and resisting Odili. In Chapter 3, the city obeys Odili's curfew, fearful of the impending Zidin attack. Zuri and the party, including Tau, Kellen, Uduak, Themba, Ya, and Hadith, approach the gifted citadel to reach tunnels leading to the Guardian Keep. Zuri negotiates entry with the Ndlovu guards, and a fight ensues, leaving Tau conflicted about killing. Inside, the citadel is vast, interconnected, and black-painted, with a central rotunda holding a bronze statue of Queen Typha and her guardian dragon. Zuri explains the gifted initiates are scattered and they must traverse the tunnels to warn the queen and entreat nearby guardians, as the keep cannot hold against Odili's forces alone. Tau struggles with the tunnel's claustrophobic passage, nearly overwhelmed by fear while the party fights through Odili's Indlovu ambush. Zuri separates to rally the coterie for a hex to call guardians, leaving Tau and the others to ascend to the surface, reaching the Guardian Keep just as fighting erupts. In Chapter 4, Tau enters the Keep's massive anteroom, where the Queen's Guard, led by champion Abshir Okar, is fiercely defending a hallway against Odili's full-blooded Indlovu. Fighting rages near the fountain, where a towering bronze statue of Siori, Queen Typha's champion and lover, stands with blood-red water flowing from his sword. Tau engages several Indlovu while deciding whether to follow Kellen, who charges to aid the Queen's Guard. Jabari joins Tau, narrowly avoiding death as they fight to reach Kellen and the hallway. Abshir directs the battle, moving strategically despite injuries, but is eventually wounded, forcing Tau and Jabari to pull him to safety. Before collapsing, Abshir instructs Tau to find the queen in the room called the Goddess's Choice and tells Kellen to take the gold door. Despite the chaos, Tau resolves to pursue Odili, determined to protect the queen and stop the enemy from escaping. Part 16. In Chapter 1 of Enraged, Tau and Jabari sprint through the halls of the palace, passing portraits of Omehi queens, until they reach the octagonal room called the Goddess's Choice. Choosing the gold door, they enter a courtyard containing a detailed map of their peninsula. Tau spots Odili, Dejen, the Kaid, and 2 Indlovu preparing to break through a door to capture the queen. Tau attacks Abiodun Onyakachi, killing him quickly, then faces Dejen, who is enraged by the Kaid's power and transformed into a monstrous Ingonyama. Dejen smashes through the door to the queen's room, forcing Tau to dodge attacks while Jabari confronts other enemies. Tau engages Dejen in brutal combat, using terrain and improvised weapons to survive. As Dejen becomes vulnerable, Tau relentlessly assaults him, forcing the Kaid to overextend her power until she collapses and dies from her own enervation. Tau then kills Dejen and turns to confront Abasi Odili and protect the queen. In Chapter 2, Tau bursts into the room to find Jabari struggling against the Indlovu, severely wounded and bleeding, while Queen Siora stands with a gifted woman who has enervated the full blood, keeping Jabari alive. Tau confronts Abasi Odili, who flees, but Jabari is further injured by the Indlovu. Tau engages the Indlovu, ultimately killing him despite sustaining pain, while Jabari slumps against the wall. Queen Siora questions Tau about his loyalty, but he focuses on pursuing Odili. Tau encounters Kellen, Hadith, and Uduak, who report the Queen's Guard holds the keep, though the siege by Odili's forces continues, and they confirm that Abshir and Champion Okar are dead. The gifted woman stresses defending the warlord's son, Kana. Despite the Queen's plea to join her at the battlements, Tau is torn between duty and pursuit of Odili, but ultimately agrees to protect the Queen. He reveals his name as Tau Solaran and rises with the others to join the defense. In Chapter 3, Tau, Queen Siora, and the others march past the bodies of fallen Indlovu, Dejen, and the Kaid. Naya explains the Kaid died after her shroud collapsed, and Tau recounts defeating the enraged Ingonyama alone. Kellen informs the Queen and Vizier of Abasi and Taya's betrayal at the Zidin Conclave, leaving the keep under siege. The Queen's Guard fights desperately as Odili's forces scale the walls with rope hooks and batter the bronze gates. Tau, Uduak, Hadith, and Kana defend the battlements, killing climbing Indlovu, dislodging ropes, and securing their section. Queen Siora stands before her troops, rallying them with her presence and commanding cleverness and luck in the fight. She confirms to Kana that the nobility betrayed them, and that a gifted sent to him was a fire demon agent. As the Zidin arrive, Odili's men finally bring down the gates, overwhelming the Guardian Keep and intensifying the siege. In Chapter 4, the courtyard's Queen's Guard are wiped out by the invading Indlovu. Queen Siora refuses to leave the battlements despite Nia's warnings and asks Tau Solaran to ensure they do not fall into enemy hands if defeat comes. Tau pledges to protect her, though he knows the odds are nearly impossible. As the Indlovu swarm the stairs, an earthquake-like upheaval shakes the battlements and courtyard. From the molten sinkhole, a young dragon emerges, its body scarred and chained. Zuri, its handler, directs the creature against the Indlovu, incinerating dozens and throwing others into walls, turning the courtyard into a fiery battlefield. The youngling is not a central mountain guardian and operates without a hex, meaning Zuri is drawing power without full control, straining herself. The dragon blocks Odili and his men's advance, creating a chance for the Queen's forces to regroup. Kellen Okar prepares to pursue the traitor Odili under Tsiora's orders, while Zuri collapses under the effort. In Chapter 5, Tao finds Zuri in Isihogo, struggling to control the young dragon, whose power is immense. Her shroud is gone, revealing her glowing, radiant form that draws demons toward her. Tao fights off multiple monstrous demons attacking them, cutting and burning them with his gift-infused swords, but is increasingly wounded. Despite his efforts, the demons overwhelm him, including a massive, eyeless, spiked creature that tracks him relentlessly. Tao channels energy from Ananthi's prison, drawing immense power to protect Zuri, diverting the demon's attention from her. He battles fiercely, sustaining severe injuries from multiple attacks, leaving him unable to fully defend himself. As the horde of demons swarms endlessly in the distance, a gifted intervenes. Queen Tsiora appears, using a powerful enervating blast to forcibly pull Tao out of Isihogo, warning him he will die there. Zuri remains behind, still struggling with the dragon, as Tao is expelled from the underworld. In Chapter 6 Limits, Tao lies injured after his psychic wounds from Isihogo leave him physically debilitated, though unseen. Nea and Kana aid him, revealing that the damage is psychic, not visible, but still lethal. Queen Tsiora remains focused in Isihogo, while Zuri, weakened and on her knees, survives the initial ordeal. Odili and his men attempt to attack the youngling dragon, which reacts violently, killing many of Tao's allies. Zuri briefly returns to Isihogo, controlling the youngling enough to prevent a second fire blast, but the demons there distract her and the dragon's fire ultimately incinerates her. Tao collapses in grief, crying uncontrollably. Meanwhile, negotiations occur between Queen Tsiora and the warlord Achak to secure Kana's safety. A binding oath grants one moon cycle of peace and Kana's life in exchange for restraint. The chapter ends with the youngling still unbound, the coterie approaching and Tao powerless, witnessing the deaths of those he loves. Epilogue. Tsiora confronts Tao Solaran, who has been isolated and broken since the burning of those they lost. Despite warnings from her trusted vizier Naya about his instability and violent tendencies, Tsiora seeks his aid to unify the fractured queendom. Tao is haunted by past losses, including the death of a gifted initiate during a dragon attack, and initially refuses to help, consumed by grief and self-pity. Tsiora explains the political crisis. Abasi Odili controls Palm City. Her younger sister Azi has pledged loyalty to him, and the nobles and lessers are divided. She appeals to Tao's sense of duty and skill, framing him not as a hero, but as a weapon essential for survival. Presenting him with specially forged guardian swords, she convinces him to accept the mission. Tao agrees to lead loyal forces, avenge the fallen, quell the rebellion, and kill Abasi Odili, becoming the queendom's champion and ensuring the war to come.